Welcome to the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner Prepcast, where we guide you through everything you need to know for your certification exam. Whether you're just starting or looking to refine your knowledge, this course will set you up for success. Brought to you by baremetalcyber.com. Let's get started. As organizations grow their AWS usage, managing identities across multiple accounts becomes a real challenge. Instead of juggling IAM users and long-lived access keys in each account, AWS provides a more scalable solution. IAM Identity Center, previously called AWS Single Sign-On. IAM Identity Center allows organizations to centralize user authentication and provide single sign-on across AWS accounts and third-party applications. This reduces complexity, improves security, and makes it easier for users to access the resources they need. For the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner exam, you should know IAM Identity Center exists to simplify access management at scale. IAM Identity Center supports multiple identity sources. It has its own built-in directory for small environments, but it also integrates with Active Directory or external identity providers using standards like SAML and OIDC. This flexibility allows organizations to use the identity system they already have, instead of recreating accounts in AWS. For example, a company using Microsoft Active Directory can connect it to IAM Identity Center so employees use their existing credentials to log into AWS. For the exam, remember that IAM Identity Center can connect to external IDPs and doesn't require IAM users in every account. Permission sets are the foundation of the IAM Identity Center authorization. A permission set is a collection of permissions that maps to IAM roles in target accounts. Instead of manually creating roles and attaching policies, administrators define permission sets centrally and apply them across accounts. For example, a read-only permission set might grant view-only access, while an admin-limited set provides administrative rights with guardrails. On the exam, know that permission sets are reusable templates that simplify access assignment. Assignments tie everything together. Administrators assign users or groups to specific accounts and link them to permission sets. This creates a clear, auditable mapping of who has access to what. For example, a developer group might be assigned to the development account with power user permissions, while the finance group is assigned to the billing account with restricted access. On the exam, remember that assignments connect users, accounts, and permission sets into a single model. Lifecycle management is another feature supported by IAM Identity Center. Using SCIM, or System for Cross-Domain Identity Management, user provisioning and deprovisioning can be automated. This means when an employee joins, their account is created automatically with the right group memberships. When they leave, their access is revoked immediately. This reduces the risk of orphaned accounts and aligns AWS with HR systems. For exam purposes, know that SCIM supports automated lifecycle management. The IAM Identity Center User Portal provides a simple interface for end users. From one portal, they can log in and switch between AWS accounts without having to manage separate credentials. For example, a developer who works in multiple accounts can switch between them in just a few clicks. This streamlines the user experience and reduces password fatigue. On the exam, remember that the portal is the central access point for users. IAM Identity Center also integrates with the AWS CLI. The AWS SSO login workflow in CLI v2 makes it easy for developers to authenticate once and receive temporary credentials for their work. This replaces the need to store static IAM keys locally, which has long been a security risk. For exam preparation, know that CLI v2 integrates natively with IAM Identity Center to issue temporary, scoped credentials. A major benefit of IAM Identity Center is reducing reliance on long-lived IAM keys. By providing temporary credentials, it eliminates one of the most common vulnerabilities in AWS environments. Developers and administrators authenticate through SSO and receive short-lived access tokens, which expire automatically. On the exam, remember that IAM Identity Center favors temporary over permanent credentials. Central auditing is another governance benefit. Administrators can review sign-in activity, assignments, and permission set usage in one place. This makes compliance reporting easier and reduces the burden of account-by-account audits. For example, a compliance team can demonstrate who had access to production accounts at a specific time. On the exam, know that IAM Identity Center supports centralized auditing. IAM Identity Center also integrates tightly with AWS organizations. This means it can scale across multiple accounts, applying permission sets and assignments consistently. For example, permission sets can be applied to all accounts within an organizational unit. This consistency ensures governance across the enterprise. For the exam, know that IAM Identity Center leverages AWS organizations for multi-account management. Beyond AWS accounts, IAM Identity Center also provides single sign-on for SaaS applications and custom apps. Administrators can configure access to tools like Salesforce, Slack, or GitHub, so employees log in once and use all their applications without separate credentials. This extends SSO beyond AWS, making IAM Identity Center a central hub for enterprise identity. On the exam, remember that Identity Center supports both AWS and external applications. The governance benefits of IAM Identity Center are clear. It enforces consistent policies, reduces misconfigurations, and supports least privilege by standardizing permission sets. Instead of dozens of inconsistent IAM users scattered across accounts, organizations gain a unified identity model. For exam purposes, know that IAM Identity Center enhances governance by simplifying and standardizing access. Finally, for the exam scope, remember that IAM Identity Center reflects the concept of identity federation. Federation means trusting an external identity system to authenticate users, while AWS manages authorization. You don't need to dive into technical details, but you should be able to explain that IAM Identity Center allows centralized identities to access AWS accounts without creating IAM users everywhere. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Setting up IAM Identity Center begins with choosing the identity source. Organizations can use the built-in directory, connect to Active Directory, or integrate with an external identity provider using standards like SAML or OIDC. After selecting the identity source, administrators connect the service to their AWS organization so that multiple accounts can be managed centrally. This setup ensures that user identities are consistent across environments and that permissions flow naturally from one directory. On the exam, remember that the first step is deciding where your identities originate. Creating permission sets is the next step. These sets define what level of access users will receive, such as read-only access for auditors or a scoped administrator set with limited rights. Permission sets are reusable and apply consistently across accounts. This reduces the chances of misconfiguration that often occur when managing IAM roles manually. For the exam, know that permission sets are templates that map to roles and accounts. Assignments tie permission sets to users or groups and target accounts. Administrators can assign these directly or apply them at the organizational unit level for broader coverage. For example, a developer group could be assigned to all accounts in the development OU with a power user permission set. This consistency ensures that every developer has the same rights across environments. On the exam, remember that assignments connect identity, account, and permission set into one coherent model. Identity Center also supports enforcement of stronger authentication policies. External identity providers can enforce multi-factor authentication, device posture checks, or conditional access rules. For example, administrators can require MFA for all privileged accounts or block access from unmanaged devices. These protections add layers of security beyond simple username and password. On the exam, expect to see MFA highlighted as a key part of securing IAM Identity Center logins. Automated offboarding is made possible with CIM. If an employee leaves the organization and their HR record is deactivated, CIM automatically revokes their AWS access. This eliminates delays and prevents orphaned accounts from lingering. For example, when a contractor's project ends, their access disappears the same day. On the exam, remember that SCIM helps automate provisioning and deprovisioning of user identities. Logs from IAM Identity Center activity can be sent to CloudTrail and CloudWatch for monitoring. This includes sign-in attempts, permission set usage, and assignments. Logging provides visibility for audits and compliance, ensuring that organizations can prove who had access at any given time. For the exam, know that IAM Identity Center integrates with AWS logging services for central monitoring. Delegated administration allows one account to manage IAM Identity Center for the entire organization. Instead of requiring management from the root account, responsibilities can be assigned to a dedicated admin account. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and reduces risk by isolating governance functions. For the exam, remember that delegated admin is supported for IAM Identity Center and multi-account setups. Compared to traditional IAM users, IAM Identity Center offers clear advantages at scale. IAM users require manual creation in each account, password management, and access key rotation. Identity Center eliminates these burdens by centralizing authentication and issuing temporary credentials. For the exam, expect questions contrasting the inefficiency of IAM users with the scalability of Identity Center. Access Analyzer can be used alongside Identity Center to ensure cross-account and external access is properly scoped. This tool helps identify overly broad permissions that may have slipped through. For example, it can detect if an external identity provider has access to resources beyond what is intended. On the exam, remember that Access Analyzer reinforces least privilege in federated environments. Least privilege tuning of permission sets is a continuous process. Organizations often start with broad permissions and then refine them based on actual usage data. By monitoring logs and reviewing Access Advisor reports, administrators can strip away unnecessary permissions over time. On the exam, remember that least privilege is not a one-time action. It requires iterative tuning of policies. Documenting access request and approval flows ensures governance remains strong. Organizations should maintain a clear process for who can request access, how it is approved, and how it is assigned. For example, a developer requesting production access should require manager approval and be assigned a temporary permission set. On the exam, know that documentation supports compliance and audit readiness. There are also common pitfalls to avoid. One is relying solely on the built-in directory for large enterprises that already have identity providers. This creates duplication. Another is granting overly broad permission sets, which undermines least privilege. A third is failing to enable MFA, leaving accounts vulnerable. For the exam, remember that the best answers highlight avoiding these pitfalls by integrating identity providers, scoping permissions tightly, and enforcing MFA. Future-proofing identity architecture is another goal of IAM Identity Center. By relying on open standards like SAML, OIDC, and SCIM, organizations ensure they can adapt to new identity technologies over time. They avoid lock-in and remain flexible as cloud adoption grows. On the exam, know that AWS Identity Center uses open standards for long-term scalability. As we close this episode, remember that IAM Identity Center simplifies, secures, and scales identity management across AWS. By centralizing authentication, using permission sets, automating provisioning, and enforcing strong security practices like MFA, it eliminates the weaknesses of managing IAM users individually. For the exam, focus on knowing what Identity Center does conceptually and how it contrasts with IAM users. In practice, adopting it brings efficiency, security, and governance to cloud access at any scale. That concludes today's episode of the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner Prepcast. Be sure to tune in for the next episode and visit us online at baremetalcyber.com or cyberauthor.me for more resources, including news, mailing lists, YouTube videos, podcasts, and much more.